गुड इवनिंग एंड वेलकम टू गाना शॉट। गाना शॉट में आप सबका स्वागत है। Today we're going to see what are the Chinese views have been about India-US relations, especially after a prime minister's visit to USA. Uh, what I'll do is today, I've been waiting to do this. I didn't react immediately because I thought we should get a long-term view of this whole story rather than getting a immediate newsy kind of a story. So what I did was I collected from different sources. One, what the Chinese uh, international media portrays and how they view it, and that's multidimensional. Let me put it at the outset. Then the Chinese vernacular, यानी मैंड्रिन के अंदर वो कैसे बात करते हैं हमारे देश के बारे में और about the prime minister. That's actually eye-opening. And the third, to get balance into this whole story, I picked up the CICR, China Institute of Contemporary International Research, CICIR, as they say. And they very interestingly put out analysis in November, just after Trump got elected, before all this. And I got that analysis and I'll present it to you. So you're going to get three different viewpoints. That's the first part. The second part of the story is the fact that, look, there's a lot happening in the world. China has gone near Australia and sailing around and firing. We'll talk of that later, maybe over the weekend. And then you see, Trump trying to end the war with Russia, and there are different takes on it. And incidentally, tomorrow I'm going to put out a video at 8 o'clock in the morning. Members can already see it. Have a look at it. This is from someone who's lived his best part of his life in Russia, a person called John Helmer, who's a very mature man, aged person, who stayed over 3 decades in Russia. He knows the Russian system well, and we spoke for 1 hour today, and I'm putting it out tomorrow morning. Have a look at it. You'll get a clear idea of one perspective of the Russia-Ukraine war and where this peace process is going. We'll take that forward with him. He's some sort of my friend. Okay. So all that is happening. The elections in Germany and, contracts are being made between Ukraine and US and all that. All that is there. But we have to be focused. Let's stay focused what's important to us. And what's important to us is China. Now, at the outset, notwithstanding what everyone said, if I have a very, unbiased view about what happened during the Prime Minister's visit to USA and the way Trump handled him and the way he handled Trump, I think India has handled Trump the best. His allies have not been able to handle him. His enemies have not been able to handle him. Of course, he treats Russia on a different level. He's voted against everyone. He's gone against the grain in the UN. So there's something happening there. So to that extent, I think we have handled him the best. My view. Okay. Many in India don't feel so. And I was quite disappointed that some Indians have gone on Pakistani channels and spoken against this accord. And when Pakistanis themselves don't do so. But that's a different story. Okay. And they are fundamentally leftists. And I'm surprised that these leftists are aligning with Pakistan of all people, the third rate country. So that's something for us to ponder about. Right. Now let's get going with my, I have a serious presentation and I'd like to, I'll go deliberately so that you understand various viewpoints in this whole story. Okay. The first thing, what does Global Times say? Global Times says that 2025 will be challenging for India and its foreign policy. And they feel that, the key task for our government and Mr. Modi will be to keep India's interests upfront and keep the US pressure away without getting into conflicts like it happened to the Biden administration. Okay. Then the question they pose is, will the Modi government compromise further under tariff, the pressures of the tariff, as other countries have done? Or will it take a firm stand or will it cave in? Valid questions. Actually, we've done nothing. We've neither taken a stand nor have we caved in. A lot of issues. We'll analyze this as we go along. Okay. Then you look at, there was a series of articles from South China Morning Post giving various facets of this entire story. I'll just put the headlines out. So this came before the visit. This headline: how Modi's visit could add to China's growing list of worries. And this focused on the security issues. It says that the Modi-Trump summit could complicate the security issues for China because it will increase the Indo-Pacific construct and give Quad a militaristic outlook, which concerns China. Okay. And then immediately after the visit, this article came out. He says Trump talked very tough with Modi, and he showed Modi all tariff signals. And that means India is not off the hook. India is also kept dangling. Okay. Whereas our Prime Minister was calling for an increase in trade and all that, but tariffs are the dark cloud over or horizon as per this. But I don't think we will be hit with tariffs like everyone else. But there are, I'll come back with that later, that analysis. But let's look at the Chinese perspective. This is a new perspective which comes out. It says Indo-Pacific realities mean Pakistan-China alliance can only deepen. So they feel that, look, as India and USA, the partnership increases and they perceive it to be increasing, which means that Pakistan-China access will increase. And they're saying so. We need to do that. So that collusive threat will get reinforced. What we need to do, we'll talk of it. But let's understand the Chinese thinking. Then, somewhere Mr. Trump had said, India, US, China, and Russia can all get along, big powers and all that. He made a remark during one of his talks. So that got highlighted. Is it leading to a G4? I don't think so. Because what's happened in this entire past 2-3 months is Trump has spoken of G2 sometime, that USA and China can solve the world's problems. Somewhere he has spoken that of Russia, China, and USA. Now, during this, he has spoken of, he's included India also. So his stance is shifting. I have my views about it. So we leave it at that. But fact is that this angle has opened up. And then this is a very interesting angle. Now they talk of Chindia again. It says, look, Trump is putting so much pressure on India that India will be forced to turn towards China. So will Chindia come up again? Right? So No, like for example, this fellow is from China. He says 56 since Vishwaguru went to USA for Tarif and came back with tariff. Look, this kind of trolling is useless. I mean, one has to analyze what the Chinese think. Obviously, this fellow is a Chinese or something like that. Okay. So let's look at what else happened and how things have. See, this is something very significant which has been brought out by the Chinese. The US aid freeze. He says, look, India gets an opening. Will India stand up to this or rise to the challenge? And in this, they're talking of Bangladesh, Maldives, Nepal, Sri Lanka, all this. But India has already stood up to that challenge. India is in a position to help bail out Nepal. It will come at the right time. Bhutan is well on our, side. Sri Lanka is completely okay with us. Maldives is doing a dither, but I'll talk of that later, maybe Sunday. We'll talk about the neighbors. Stock of the, we'll take stock of the neighborhood. Bangladesh is a problem. Afghanistan, we're doing very well with Afghanistan. Pakistan to chhod dijiye. Even Myanmar, we're doing pretty well. So will this US aid freeze give India an opportunity to flex its financial muscle? Because no, they're not going to get anything from anywhere. So this is a point which we have to understand. So if you see between South China Morning Post, Global Times and all that, they've given various angles of this visit, which overall I thought was a balanced way of looking at things. Right? I thought, fine. Let's not expect China to praise what has happened between Mr. Trump and Mr. Modi. They will be criticizing. That's okay. But now look at their Mandarin press. And I got it from Guancha. I changed this is of course a translation. Have a look what he says. He says, Liu Zhongyi. Who's Liu Zhongyi first and foremost? He is a director and researcher of South Asia Research Center of Shanghai Institute of International Studies. Shanghai Institute is a very reputed think tank. So there he is in charge of the South Asia research and he's made this analysis. It's a pretty deep analysis if you have a look at it. Trump wants India to cut meat. I don't understand that part. Why did Modi, who likes it so much, agree? But I'll leave that headline because the actual translation of Mandarin into English gives some funny ideas. But let me go further. He says, Modi was the fourth head of state who went and were received by Trump. He says this is more like Trump summoned Modi and all his thugs and followers went to obey the command. It's derogatory. But that's the point. The Chinese outside in the international press are balanced. They appear balanced. But within, they're very racist. They project an image in their own vernacular as if China is the biggest power. USA, of course, is the villain. Baki sab to bewkoof. Okay? And anything about India is completely derogatory. And why do I take this out? Because we need to understand this is what China professes, deals, and all that. I am very sure that no other news portal or YouTube channel would be getting you this kind of detail on what China thinks of us. If you do, let me know. I want to watch it. I'll educate myself. Okay, how does Trump look at India? And how does he position India? That's what he says. He says Trump wants to strengthen security and defense cooperation with India. We all know that. He wants to force India to buy a large number of high-priced weapons. And in this, they're talking specifically of F-35. And India to assist USA in restraining China. Look, all this in Chinese is in very flowery terms. I have just culled out the major thing. Okay. This is the Trump outlook. What is Modi's outlook? Uh, Modi wanted to, as per them, Modi wanted to negotiate trade, tariff, and immigration issues with Trump, but Trump brushed them all aside. And as far as Trump is concerned, Indo Pacific strategy is the top priority. So, those of us who think there's going to be G2, Trump will bend to China and he'll accommodate China, I don't think so. You see the tenor of this kind of analysis, they are worried Indo-Pacific. Okay, they're worried India getting armed by American weapons. Let's be very clear. And for that, to that extent, they'll never be our friends. We can never trust them. In any case, no one can trust Chinese. Okay. And then he goes on to say the strategic mutual trust is not strong. And India is not willing to become a cannon fodder ally of the US to contain China. That's the presumption. That's the presumption that India doesn't want to contain China. We might say we don't want to contain, but definitely the fact that you have spoken of Indo-Pacific and you going to host the Quad summit here itself is a direction to contain China. And says India does not want to rely too much on USA, whether it's weapon equipment, but India wants to localize production and technology and get technology from America. He's right. This part is right. Why should I depend too much on USA? Like I did that, program with General KJ Singh. We need a balanced approach. We need to be in a look. If we can't get technology, we those things, and we have to continue to import, which is a fact. For high tech equipment, we don't have a choice because we have not worked earlier, so there's no point looking back. Why? Let's balance. Maybe 15 to 20%. Don't cross a threshold beyond a threshold with any country. At one point of time, we were 70% dependent on Russia. Now it's come down to about 35%. Ideal with Russia we have any country is about 20%. The four major countries where we import from: Israel, France, USA, and Russia. 20% each, and the rest 20 from South Korea, and a few of the East European countries and all that. So you have a balance. So if our relations go bad with one, it doesn't matter. Okay. Then he goes on to say defense cooperation has technical problems. There could be these technical problems are procedural also in nature. There's a complexity of technology transfer and India's underestimation of its own ability. In the sense, this is also derogatory when he says, no, India doesn't have the confidence in its own ability. So it has to depend on others, and this will not go away. That's the intonation. And he says India is also very tired of high prices of US equipment and the slow progress of technology transfer. Well, we are. He's only stating the thing. We've told the Americans we have to hasten up, delivery of what we have paid for. For example, they have 404 engines, Apaches. So, any analysis, you have to understand the thing, what it is. You see, this analysis is a mixture of saying that India and America are not okay, but they are friends of mutual convenience against China. Right. And then he says, what are Indian hopes? It's a pretty long article, but I'm going to spend some time on all these because this is the crux. We have to understand. Because when you deal with China, you have to understand how they view us. You deal with USA, you should understand what they expect from us when we deal with China. And it's a game. We need to understand. और सबसे पहले तो इम्पोर्टेंट थिंग है, दुश्मन क्या सोच रहा है, ये तो चाणक्य नीति है. And Sun Tzu, he says, if you know your enemy, you'll never lose. So know your enemy. That's my thinking. So he says, India hopes Quad will become a military cooperation group. So how false it is. Our stance is that India should not become a military cooperation group, but Quad should be a thing for global good. There is a economic thing. There's a vaccine cooperation, medical cooperation, supply chain cooperation, and all that. For us, the militarization is the last part of the story. But for China, what they project within is that Quad is a military cooperation group. It's an alliance like NATO. And of course, India hopes that IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Forum, should be expanded so that it can counter BRI. And India also hopes for Quad Plus, South Korea and others. But I don't think we've ever hoped for Quad Plus. But this is what they inculcate in the minds of the Chinese. Because these Chinese newspapers and media is well read inside. Now, what does Trump want to do? He wants India to play a greater role, right, in defense and security. And he's not interested in economic cooperation, as per them. He's only interested in defense and security. But I think that flip is true. We know Trump to a large extent is more economically oriented. So he will look at economic cooperation because markets are here. And if America has to be great again, he needs our human resources. Now they also say that, look, Trump during his elections had said, I'll put 60% tariffs on China. But he didn't put. So far, he's not put. And he says that makes India worried. And India is worried that Trump and USA and China will reach some kind of a G2 deal. And that worries India because then India will be left out of the cold. Am I worried about it? No. Will Trump get go into a G2 deal with China? Very difficult. You just watch what's happening with Russia. See how things are happening there. That's why watch tomorrow John Helmer, what he says and how complicated things are. Okay. Don't go by the Western press. This is the Russian angle which John has set out. Have a look at it. And then, of course, this derogatory thing that India's attitudes on tariffs and immigration are very obedient. India will do whatever Trump says. And why? Because India wants an Indo-Pacific strategy. So, Indo-Pacific strategy, Quad, this will keep coming up and again. And he says India wants to use USA to contain China and promote its own rise. He's right. We want to do that. I would like anyone who helps me to help me to contain China so that we can rise. Okay. India can't contain China. Let's be very clear on its own. We can restrain China on certain issues. But containment, even USA can't contain China. It will take the might of India and USA along with Japan and Australia to contain China. Okay. This is the Chindia factor. I showed you South China Morning Post where they said, will Chindia happen? There's a chap called Maukeji. It was actually the spelling in this thing is Mao, M-A-O-U, M-A-O, and K-G, K-E-G-I, J-I. And this chap is from Tsinghua University. He says, will Modi turn to China after being turned by Trump? It's not turned by Trump, actually spurned by Trump. That's the thing. So it's $1 million question. See, the hope is, I mean, their way of analyzing this whole thing is that Mr. Modi has been spurned by Trump. And since he's been spurned by Trump, he will turn towards China, and then China has to decide what to do with India. So what's his logic? I mean, we need to understand this logic. Yeah, sorry. That slide is not up. But this is small letters, so I'll show it to you a little bigger. Okay. It says Modi's most frustrating foreign experience, this trip to USA. And he says Modi was extremely obedient. He made concessions on defense, on import tariffs, defense procurement, and illegal immigration. It was like kissing the ring. Modi has gone to kiss the ring of the emperor. That's the words they've used. Right? And, and he says, while they talk of this thing, the Indo-Pacific strategy was not greatly discussed and China was rarely mentioned. So that has disappointed Modi. And he says Trump has knocked India hard on the shackles of immigration and reciprocal traffic. These two have, put India on the back foot. When you say shackles of immigration, it is those people who were returned by aircraft with shackles. He says that's a hard knock which Trump has given intentionally to India. He says India thinks that oscillation between using US or Russia once is strategic autonomy, that don't get aligned to anyone but oscillate between the two. So, but it's not. That's what he says. There's this thing that the Indo-US partnership is the partnership of the 21st century. Then he explains it has three majors of cooperation, or rather three majors, areas of cooperation, which is national defense, trade, and technology. That is right? National defense, trade, and technology. And it corresponds to the benefits which USA expects from India. What does USA expect from India? Arms profits, trade surpluses, and research and development contributions. So he's also defining what is the content of this, and he's explaining to everyone. And then, of course, he's mentioned this business of Bangladesh coup. When Trump was asked about the Bangladesh coup, he first denied the involvement of the USA, and then suddenly said coldly, I will leave the matter of Bangladesh to Prime Minister Modi. He says this is a thoughtless flash, is the most straightforward, which vividly reflects Trump's enthusiasm for spheres of influence. So this is scary for China. He says what? He says by doing this, what is Trump doing? He says this South Asia, they're worried that USA is leaving for India to handle. And this will be India's sphere of influence, which will exclude China. And USA will be the backstop. This they're worried. They're worried about this Bangladesh development. Let's be very clear. And we need to capitalize on this. How we handle Bangladesh depends a lot. And we'll talk of Bangladesh. And it's not as on Friday and on P Gurus. I'll talk of Bangladesh. And this is important. Okay? Right. Okay, we'll go back to the slide because I think, we have to. I'm going back with the slide. I can just talk whatever is there. But the fact is that people need to understand the nuances of what the Chinese are analyzing. And this is for their internal. He says, Indian strategic and academic circles are so angry that they have resumed talking about the comprehensive restoration of exchanges with China after many years. Completely false. Are we looking at a restoration of exchanges comprehensively with China? We are not. Not so far, at least. And why does he say Indian strategic circles and academic circles and are angry? You know what these chaps have done? They've got a few articles from those who have criticized and who are against the government and published them in Guancha. He's quoting them to say this. Leftists. He says, after all, even if it is not sincerely friendly to India, it will be conducive to India's improvement of the value of United Front in the eyes of USA. He says it's okay. Even if India makes a foray with China and it's not sincere about it, its value will go up. So he says India is playing a double game. That appear as if you want to go towards China so that suddenly USA starts making concessions. So they don't trust India. Since they don't trust India, we should be very clear when we deal with China. There's no trust. One of the things which keeps coming back and back and back and back and back is that our mutual trust is zero. How can you do business with such a nation which lies? And then finally he says, after this twist and turn, the future that China-India relations can meet is bound to stabilize and rebound. That means there'll be some stability and then it'll rebound. So what should we do with India? That's a question he's asking his own people. What do we do with India? How do we handle India? Is it a rhetorical question? Or is it asking, let's punish India? Not in any case, it's not positive. So this article has analyzed the future of Chindia. Not very hopeful, but he says we have to do it in some manner. And that manner could be, punitive. That's the intonation, hidden text coming out. You see, with China, you should never take at face value what these fellows write. You have to see what is the intent behind the whole story. Okay. Now I'll show you the analysis which I felt was the best. The best of all the three. I'm not talking of the international news and analysis. I'm not talking the vernacular, the think tank approach. I thought the think tank approach by CICIR, and this was before the visit, gives the larger understanding of how China views this whole relationship. And it gives us space to think. We need to think, let me tell you. It's easy for me to say whatever China does is foolish and all that. No, that's not the way of doing things. We need to understand how they think. And we need to act accordingly. We need to have a strategic thinking and framework. Because if you don't have that, we'll be missing the wood for the trees. Okay. While on economics, they lie quite a bit. The fact remains that their economy is not good, but the fact also remains a big economy. They've gone there. It's an ailing economy. It's like an obese fellow. He can't walk fast. उसका हर वक्त दिल का धड़कन बढ़ जाता है क्योंकि मोटा है, मोटापा आ गया दिमाग में भी. But when it comes to the strategic thinking, we must understand that they have enough guys who can make a balanced assessment. So this is some kind of a balanced assessment with certain wrong premises which will be there. So let's see that. Okay, let me get that into the. Okay, so I said, look, he says this is the heading. This is the U.S. India Defense Cooperation Progress, Motivation, and Constraints by Lau Chun Hao. It's part of the China International Strategy Review, November 8, 24. 3 months back. It's in as part of CICIR, CICIR. He says, the first line he says is, the India-US defense cooperation has entered the fast track. They talk fast lane, we call the fast track. It's on a fast track. It is signing of foundational agreements, transfer of sensitive technologies, joint research and development, and development of advanced military equipment and interoperability exercises are of significance. This is the opening, their argument. Then it says their strategic convergence is based on respective national interests. But there are strategic gaps between in the India-US as far as ideology is concerned, strategic goals, industrial capacities, and all that. And all these gaps will limit cooperation. I'll add one more to this. I mean, we all know it. You see, just like we have a problem, with China in case of mutual trust, we have a similar problem with USA. Let's not wish it away. Not many people in India trust USA, and I go with them. With USA, you can't trust USA fully. On certain issues you can, on certain issues you can't. And that's how in the last 1 year and 1.5 years of the Biden administration, things went bad. Right? In the first 3/4 of that administration, we were on a song. And then we went into a tailspin on things like Bangladesh and, this Panoon case and that fellow Nijjar. Things like that. So, we need to understand that not everything is hunky-dory between India and US. Though his premises are slightly different, but we need to have our own realization. Okay. Then he says, unlikely that USA and India will become a military alliance in the full sense. But they will be a quasi-alliance. I think his assessment is right. We'll never be a military alliance. We don't want to be a military alliance. We don't want to be a US ally. We'll be a strategic partner. Alliance has different connotations, which we don't want to get involved with. And they realize it. Okay. There are pluses in this, there are minuses in this, but that's a national decision and I'm go with it. He says this cooperation is increasingly focused on targeting China, creating real challenges for China's national security. They acknowledge it and they're worried about it. Okay. I'm sorry, I think I have made a mistake by not showing you this slide here. This is the one. So this is the one. See this. So it's focusing on targeting China and creating problems for China, which they are at times at odds as to how they do it. And I have always been saying that this problem with China will continue because China has got itself into a forefront situation, which I keep repeating, which people need to understand. China today has a Korean peninsula which is unstable, and that's their, फौज में एक DFSOS होता है, defensive fires. What is defensive fire? When you're in defense, You say, okay, enemy can come here along this, at this place when he comes, I'll engage him. That's a defensive fire task. If he comes on another direction, I'll engage him. A third direction. So wherever the enemy is likely to come to attack you, you nominate places where you can bring down your defensive fire. In all this, there's something called DFSOS. What is that? That's the most dangerous approach, which might not happen, but will compromise your defenses. Okay. On that, if the guns are not engaged elsewhere, guns will be engaged, kept ready for the DFSOS. And when you say DFSOS, you give a code word, they fire. That's the connotation of a DFSOS. For China, Korea is the DFSOS. Please understand this. Okay, that's the thing. So they got 4 fronts: Korea, Taiwan, South China Sea, India. And of course, backstop USA in the Pacific, backstop India in the Indian Ocean. And they're worried. Okay, so the security challenges which India and USA have created for China are huge, and they acknowledge it. Okay, what is next? He goes on to say, there are expanded areas of cooperation. So what are the expanded areas of cooperation? Joint military exercises. They're worried about the joint military exercises which we have carried out. He's analyzed in great detail. He says USA is the country with which India has conducted the most joint military exercises and military personnel exchanges. We don't know about this. They know about it. And he's quoted the US Congressional Research Service in this. I didn't know about this. That we have had maximum joint military exercises with USA. And he says it covers all services. Yuddhabhyas with the Army, Sea Dragon with the Navy, Cope India with the Air Force, Vajraprahar with Special Forces. That scares them. You know, Special Forces have a different connotation. They can do funny things. And then joint military exercise called Tiger Triumph and Malabar. Malabar to annual. And you not only exercise with USA, you're exercising with many navies. That's part of Quad. So it worries them. And then what worries them is this. Next thing, what he analyzed. He says US share in India's defense trade is increasing while that of Russia is decreasing. And this has happened over the past 3 to 4 years. This worries them a hell of a lot. And what is more, says there are cooperation in new domains: ocean, space, artificial intelligence. They're worried. And we have started exchanging LOs. One officer of ours get posted to the Pacific Command, and one officer has now gone to the Central Command, I think Central Command or one of these commands, especially to see how AI is going to be put in battle and things like that. And one of their officers has come to India, I think somewhere in Bombay or somewhere, or in Delhi. I'm not very sure, but one officer is posted here. So that is worrisome for them. Actually, we've officially said we're exchanging LOs. What happens when these LOs come? You have to understand why they're worried. Why they are worried about LOs? Because LOs, are fast conduits to smoothen misapprehensions. For example, a newspaper report comes, let's say in India. So the American officer here who's working in an Indian military headquarters can quickly talk, because he's part of us, and say, what's this? Take a view and put it back to them quickly. Look, this is not the case. The thing is like this. This reporter has twisted it. or look, there is some problem. I think we need to resolve it, or let's whatever. Same thing both ways. So those LOs are very important. It's not just communication and all. Physically, if you are, staying with each other and working with each other, working across a desk, a lot of things, okay, work out. And that's something which you all should understand. Okay, now let's go ahead. So that worries them huge. So this AI space, the cooperation between ISRO and NASA is huge. And what we are doing in open oceans, mashallah. Okay. Then he's put a full chapter on strengthening defense systems integration. I want you to see the heading systems integration. The systems integration scares China. Why? Because their belief is systems, because their war doctrine talks of a fight. They say a fight between two nations or two adversaries is a fight between systems. The own system versus the adversary system. System versus system fight. So when system integration happens between two adversaries, it scares them. It worries them. So what does he write in this assessment? He says US and India have reached many consensus on cooperation concerning the sharing of high-tech, sensitive technologies and integration of defense industry ecosystem, which is considered a qualitative shift. This is just not military integration, but it is an integration beyond that. And this integration will go forward. Because this integration is in the civil sectors. Already on these sectors, we are quite integrated. I think with the current way the geopolitics is going, this will increase. And this will make China even more uncomfortable. And of course, then he goes on to say US has committed to transferring technologies to India that may not be available to some of its allies. They've not given it to anyone else, but giving it to India. That worries China. Then, of course, he talks of, he quotes examples of the HALE UAVs, MQ-9, the MOU between GE and Hindustan Aeronautics for 414 engines and all that. Then he talks of ISET, of course, which is now called Trust. So all this worries them. This is all their system integrating with our system. Okay, that worries them immensely. And then, of course, he goes on to say India has also made unprecedented compromises concerning US military presence in South Asia. This is something I don't know because there's no evidence to this. Where is US present in South Asia? He's not present in India, neither in Nepal, nor in Bangladesh, nor in Afghanistan. They've quit Afghanistan. So, and the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal. The US presence in Bay of Bengal and Indian Ocean is the least if you consider the Indo-Pac Command. Okay, their Pacific Command, PACOM. So this is somewhere I think their assessment is wrong, but so be it. They are assessing it that way. You can't stop them. That's how it is. And then the last point, which I've been talking of, and which I think they've caught on, and it worries them, and it should worry them. India agrees to provide maintenance and repair services for US Navy concerning mid-voyage and emergent repair purposes. This is a very important development which has happened over the past 2 years. You see, US is operating so many ships. When they have to go for repairs, major repairs, right, or emergent repairs, where do they have to go? They have to go back to USA or get repaired in Japan and all that. This is now they don't have to do that. They can come to India. And that's how, like I've been saying, okay, you buy defense equipment from USA. That's okay. But as far as you repair their stuff, you do, and that's quite a lot. Huh? Many people don't understand this. In defense exports, repair, refit is a major component. It's revenue. It has to happen. You might buy a ship, but you have to repair it throughout its life. Shipping, you might buy an aircraft, but you're dependent on the OEM throughout its life. Similarly, USA might have a ship here, but it needs repair throughout. So why won't it come to India and get and do repair? That's the thinking. Why doesn't India become a major MRO hub for aircraft, even civil aircraft? This worries them. Okay, so it's very right. So the defense integration of defense systems is something which worries China quite a bit. Okay, and it comes out in this analysis. Then it talks of what is the motivation for deepening the US-India defense cooperation. It talks a bit in great detail. Again, I'll make it big because the lettering is small. Okay, it says first motivation, checking and balancing China as a strategic driving force, and this is unanimous. This is across the board. You see in all the analysis talks of this. It says convergence of interest is a realistic basis. Again, everyone talks of India-US convergence of interests. Now then he says change of India's policy is an important variable. That India has changed in the recent past how to deal with China, and it has gone closer to USA. Okay, and US has comprehensively conducted strategic competition with China, and that is an inevitability, and that motivates India, because the strategic competition between US and China won't go. We need US support, so we will align. That's the motivation for us to align with USA. That's a fact. And he's identified it. I'm glad they've identified it. Okay. Then he says USA has strengthened its alliance system and military deployment around China, which is again a statement of fact. He says it has intervened in the Taiwan Strait, South China Sea, and the Sino-Indian border due to various dispute to various extents. Again, a matter of fact. India has changed this is what I said. India is no more hesitant. He says India has changed its historical hesitant attitude about defense cooperation with the US. It no longer hesitates to obtain and use US intelligence and equipment technology to counter China. They have very correctly identified this, that we are going to do this. After all, there is evidence of this, and we need to do it. And one of the areas of US-India defense cooperation is intelligence. The cornerstones. And from a US perspective, they feel that, look, when this cooperation, trust will develop through intelligence sharing. And that's something this fellow has missed, but that's okay. Why should I put in words what he has missed? Okay, what next? Again, small, sorry. He says India hopes to make use of US to promote its own defense industry and defense capacity building, which we have spoken earlier. India's domestic politics and foreign strategy have been undergoing major adjustment and changes, which is a fact. We've changed. And who's forced us to change? I mean, that's something which he has not spoken. Who's forced this change on us? It's China. After all, we had very good equation with China till 1718. After all, that fellow Xi Jinping came, Modi ji के बगल में बैठे, झूला झूला, महाबलीपुरम आए, सैंड में घूमा, बीच की तरफ घूमे, सब कुछ हुआ ना. उसके बाद they came to Eastern Ladakh and changed our attitude. So naturally our attitude has changed. and it will not go back because they don't have trust. I've shown you what the internal show is through the vernacular press. You must understand the first one is completely reactionary to that visit, and international media, they've approached a particular approach. This is a in-depth approach which they put it out again in think tank in the international media. The other one is not available so easily. You have to take effort to get it out. See the difference in the thought processes. So we had to discern how China is doing all this. Okay. Then he says, yeah, this is something you must all see. So I'll make this big. Okay. Then he says, China has completely lost India, and India needs to ally with the United States. Have been quite popular among the Indian strategic community. These two strains. So I'll ask the counter question. The counter question is, has China lost India? It has. We might get into temporary accommodation, but it has completely lost India, which I'm glad they've realized it. The second thing, right? The second thing, of course, is India needs US to sort out China. It does. We should not have a doubt about it. We do need US to sort out China or keep China at bay. I won't say sort out, but keep China at bay. So all this, goes into their thinking. So we need to understand they know precise. They're judging us as we have judged them. In fact, I would put it like this: they judge us better than we have been judging them. We've been actually foolish because we don't read what they write. And again, it astounds me why people don't subscribe to a channel like mine where I get you information from China. What does the Chinese think? We want to take all bloody useless channels and you people want to see. And that's all I can say. It's a bit of frustration also for me because I take all the effort, so no one bothers about it. So I'd request all of you, if you like what I'm talking, please press the like button. Subscribe to my channel. Because I don't have any method of giving you masala. कि पाकिस्तान टूट जाएगा, चाइना लुढ़क जाएगा. No, sir. I will give you the truth. By Satyameva Jayate, we'll win over China and defend our country. Only we have the capability of speaking the truth. Okay. Now, then he goes on in this thing. He says, okay, what are the constraints which will stop deepening this US-India defense cooperation? The first thing he says, US and India do not see eye to eye on many issues, which is a fact. There are many issues we don't see eye to eye. Even now, we don't see eye to eye with USA on the Ukraine factor. Okay. He says there are technical and procedural difficulties in the implementation of the cooperation agreement. We spoke about it earlier. That's a fact even now. And the two countries' ideology divide is increasingly enlarging. Those guys also, those Chinese chaps also spoke of this ideological divide. They're coming now also. There is some ideological divide, but not the way, the Chinese pursue ideology. We don't trust USA. No one trusts USA. Which country has trusted USA? All those countries, including the West, which has trusted USA, उन्हीं के against vote किया यार अभी Ukraine. The West and Britain, all these chaps are saying, oh, hi. ये रशिया जाके प्यूटिन को मदद कर रहा है, सॉरी यूएस से जाके प्यूटिन को मदद कर रहा है. So this is in fact, at this point of time, I think India has got the best credentials with USA and best relationship. That's not a debate. Okay. Okay. This is a very, very interesting end to this analysis. I'll be a little deliberate and go over it. It says cooperation and trust between US and India will not reach the level between US and its formal allies. There'll always be a gap. Okay, that's okay. He says there are differences in value between the US and the Indian strategic culture. The Pakistan and Russian factor will always come in. He says the Indian strategic culture runs counter to the US strategic culture. And then Pakistan will come in and Russia, because Pakistan is closer to US, so we don't trust them. We are closer to Russia, so US will not trust us. It's a fact. Difficult for the US and India to become full spectrum alliance is a fact. Yeah, then he says difficult for the China, US, India trilateral relationship to become similar to the China, US, Soviet Great Triangle during the Cold War. So somewhere they feel that tomorrow's battle, and mind you, this chap has written this in November 24. And he's written it in November 24, and Russia and China have this no holds barred kind of a relationship. Despite that, he says he's thinking of the future geostrategic triangle between India, China, and USA. He says this triangle will never replace Soviet Russia, USA, and China relationship earlier. Now, in this, what is he doing? He doesn't consider Russia to be part of the triangle. The triangle with Russia, China, and USA he's discounted completely. So he says India is out. If India will not reach, then it is a G2. You would see this behind the facade. Right? So this is what the whole story is about. The three facets of this whole story. Okay. Now, I hope you've enjoyed it. Again, I request you, if you have liked, please do press the like button and subscribe to Ganesh.